formerly NFL Dash, but we are now rebranded with another name as we head into the actual regular season. Finally, for the first time since February, we will have regular season NFL football on our television screens starting on Thursday and then the rest continuing over the weekend. But first, I want to get into a little bit of some news and talk about a little bit what's going on around the NFL. The main thing since we have last spoke is there's been a handful of starting quarterbacks to be named. That's always the most important aspect of really football in general. We talked a lot about the rookies. We know which of them we're going to get the starts. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are locked in. Trey Lance and Justin Fields are going to start the season on the bench. But the fifth one, Mac Jones, surprisingly became a starter, and the Patriots subsequently cut Cam Newton along with some other players that were named. Teddy Bridgewater won a battle against Drew Lock. James Winston won a battle against Taysom Hill. And Tyrod Taylor, I don't know if you want to call it a battle. I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of like the one guy who's surviving at the end of a zombie movie, and he's just kind of there. So he gets the mantle of starting quarterback for Houston. But yeah, I mean, just what are your kind of takeaways from some of those announcements, and what do you think of them going forward?
Well, I will say that I got my prediction correct for the Broncos starting Teddy Bridgewater. I remember saying that months ago that it was going to be Teddy taking the snaps week one. And all the Broncos fans want to tell me that it was going to be Drew Lock, but they weren't going to spend all that draft capital to get Teddy Bridgewater in to not start him. So he is starting week one. I love to see it, and it's a game that they have a potential to win against New York, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But with the Patriots, just getting rid of Cam Newton honestly shocked me with how sudden it was, but it didn't shock me that they cut him, so to speak. They seem to have been getting kind of frustrated with him over the past year. So Mac Jones starting week one in a very tough division game against Miami to start out their season. But it's kind of interesting to be able to see Mac Jones take the first snaps as opposed to Trey Lance and Justin Fields, who are still kind of waiting for their turn. But Jameis Winston starting over Taysom Hill, that doesn't shock me one bit. Jameis Winston was definitely going to be that guy going forward. And then Tyrod Taylor, like you said, it's kind of handed that job really with all the, drama that's going on with the Houston Texans organization. But in terms of, across all those four newly named starting quarterbacks, I definitely would have to say I'm more intrigued to see Mac Jones play, just to see really if he's going to be Tom Brady 2.0 this next year. I can't give him immense expectations like the New England fan bases already, but seeing Mac Jones play week one in a tough division game against Miami, if they come out of that game with a win, I mean, he's off to a pretty good start, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, of those, really Mac Jones was the most surprising one. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater definitely outplayed Drew Lock in the preseason. He's much more of a consistent option. Jameis Winston, I mean, we were pretty certain was going to get the job unless, Sean Payton really wanted to do something weird with Taysom Hill, which was not expected. And then, Tyrod Taylor. It came down to if Deshaun Watson was going to play this year. I doubt he does. There's just a lot going on there. Not that the Houston Texans are even going to be relevant. But I guess, and I'm also not surprised that Trey Lance and Justin Fields are going to start the season on the bench. I mean, that it's pretty safe. I mean, they have some veteran guys they're confident with. I think, Trey Lance probably starts whenever Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured. I think he's got a little more trust from the coaching staff than Andy Dalton does, who was just brought in this season. That I guess is a little bit surprising that they're going with Andy Dalton over Fields because, they just brought him in. It's not like he's been there. He didn't look all that great in the preseason, but, I guess they're trying to hold on to some sort of, playoff hopes, I guess, trying to get back there from last year. But I don't know. That one's a little weird to me, but the rest of it, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty. Really, the thing that shocks me is kind of how long some of them took, how long it took for the Saints to kind of go with Jameis and some of these, because, I think you could tell just from the reps and, you probably could announce these quite a bit before.
Yeah, I mean, seeing Taysom Hill not getting the starting job doesn't break my heart one bit because I'm sure they're going to use him in a ton of different packages to have him go around and try to get some trick plays up and whatnot. I mean, the Saints are facing a rebuild as well, and I think they're kind of similar in terms of like the Steelers situation where they kind of keep just lying to themselves saying that they're going to actually be in the swing of things, but you're in a division with Tampa Bay, so anything that you're doing is going to be playing catch up. But yeah, I mean, seeing Justin Fields on the bench week 1 kind of sucks because we want to see him as soon as possible because we definitely know Justin Fields is more of a long-term answer than Andy Dalton. So seeing Justin Fields as soon as possible is definitely going to be on my radar. Like I've said in previous shows, you want to see Fields and Trey Lance go at it later in the season when they play each other. I would love to see that. But in terms of the starting quarterbacks, everything else seems to be kind of locked in. I'm sure the Bears situation is going to be similar to Miami from last year where Fitzpatrick started a handful of games before Tua took over. It's probably going to be the same thing for Chicago as they're Matt Nagy is really on the hot seat in this next coming year. So we'll see Justin Fields soon, but Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, do you think Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the starter of the whole season, or do you think they're going to kind of switch on and off?
I don't know. Teddy plays solid. I don't think that he's got a huge ceiling. I don't think that, I doubt he leads them to the playoffs. I doubt he really does anything all that special, but, Drew Lock is certainly a boom or bust guy. I still think Drew Lock deserves at least one more chance. He's only going into his 3rd year, and hasn't had great situations surrounding him. So I still think that, maybe there's some potential to show a little bit of improvement. But I think if Bridgewater stays healthy, it's probably, his for the whole season. I'm not really expecting because Drew Lock's not really the type where you go, ooh, Teddy's struggling, let's put in Drew Lock for stability. He's not really by any means a stable guy. But just looking across, I looked across some of the other teams, and really the only other teams that really had, I guess, question marks or kind of figuring out or named them kind of late was the Eagles. Took a while to name Jalen Hurts the starter. They're really non-committal to him, and then they even traded for Gardner Minshew.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, he's certainly a guy who can. He's better than Joe Flacco and can certainly step in if they need him. But Jalen Hurts was always going to be that guy there. And then Indianapolis. Carson Wentz was going to be the starter when he was healthy, which is a matter of if he was going to be healthy, which I believe he is, and so he should be in line to take the first snaps against the Seahawks this Sunday. But yeah, those are really the only two. For a season in which it seemed like there was a lot of quarterbacks changing and, obviously 5 drafted in the first round. There wasn't a lot of, really uncertainty surrounding, quite a few of these teams. It was pretty locked in. So, yeah, and, I think we definitely see Lance. We definitely see Fields. Maybe we see Drew Lock. Not sure. And then obviously Taysom Hill we'll see in his little gadget role. But, other than that, yeah, Tyrod Taylor. The Houston Texans got Davis Mills, 3rd-round quarterback from Stanford. Maybe we see him at some point, but Tyrod Taylor's certainly an adequate backup. But yeah, like I said, the Texans don't really figure to matter much this year, so it's fairly inconsequential.
Well, we can see this upcoming weekend in somewhat of a different light for the different starting quarterbacks, obviously maybe making their debut like Mac Jones or, with their new team in Teddy Bridgewater. But for this upcoming weekend, we actually have our first weekend of fantasy football, which I am immensely excited for because fantasy football is addicting. I went through the worst draft of all time last night with my team, but we can talk about that on a different day. But in terms of week 1's fantasy matchups, I know that you're an avid fantasy football player, Cody.
Absolutely.
So we have a segment here called Fantasy 5. How about you go ahead and kind of break down what to expect with us?
Yeah. So this is, recurring segment. We'll be back every week. Fantasy 5 minutes. We'll limit myself and both of us to 5 minutes of fantasy. If you're watching and you're in the chat and you have fantasy questions, this is the time to get those in. But yeah, we're just going to go through and kind of look at the players we like, don't like, whatever. So I'm going to start the clock now, and we will have 5 minutes of fantasy talk. I don't know if there's a matchup, or I don't know if you've took a look at it, but kind of who you like the best this week, because I've got a few guys up my sleeve that I really like, or just matchups, I guess.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's been so long since football has been going on, so I got to get myself back into fantasy. Like I told you guys, my draft yesterday was absolutely pitiful, so I'm by no means looking at my team's lineups. But one of my favorites for MVP, not necessarily the favorite, but one of being Kyler Murray, expect probably a huge game from him this weekend, considering he's finally back with the really fun up-tempo Cardinals offense, and they're going against Tennessee, which honestly I think is going to be a really entertaining game regardless of fantasy. But Kyler Murray, week 1, he's projected well over 20 points. He's, like I said, one of the favorites for MVP. He's going pretty early in a lot of people's drafts, but that's probably one of my favorite quarterback plays. One of my least favorite quarterback plays, I'll just pick my quarterback that I picked in my league yesterday, which I'm still kicking myself over, is Trevor Lawrence. That's quite the coin flip, and thank God he's playing the Houston Texans, so he might actually get to complete a pass. But
it's the worst team.
Yeah, and the Houston Texans, they don't have J.J. Watt anymore. They don't got Jadeveon Clowney for a while now, and their defense isn't going to really do anything to that atrocious Jacksonville offense. But I'd be really interested to see the viewership for that game this weekend. But Trevor Lawrence, too much of a coin flip for me, but that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I like the Buccaneers all around. Tom Brady and those receivers going against the Cowboys on Thursday. The Cowboys defense was really bad last year. They should be improved. They made some moves to kind of help that out, but I still am not buying it in terms of slowing down an offense like the Buccaneers. So Tom Brady I really like as a play. Obviously isn't going to cost as much if it's in daily as a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, who doesn't matter who they're really playing against. They're going to light it up. And then a guy I'm kind of off on all year, but especially this week, is Joe Burrow going against Minnesota. I think the Minnesota defense will be a lot better with a formidable pass rush, and I think the Cincinnati offensive line is terrible. So then that extends to some of those receivers as well. But yeah, Joe Burrow, just behind that line is really scaring me. So those are I'm not really looking at him. And then the Chiefs and the Browns are playing each other. That is a start everybody you have on either of those teams. That should be, a great game. And then in terms of running backs, it's hard to know going into week 1 just because a lot of defense has changed. We don't know who is going to be great against the run, who's going to be great against the pass. Last year we saw at this time the Seahawks were an historically bad passing defense, which people were not expecting. So this is a tough kind of time to kind of gouge those. But running backs I like. Derrick Henry going against the Arizona Cardinals should be good. That defense isn't anything too incredible. Christian McCaffrey's good every week, but going up against the Jets should be very helpful. And then going back to that Buccaneers-Cowboys matchup, I don't really like Zeke against a really stout Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
If I'm going to have my pick of the weekend, that, mark my words, they're going to go off just because I'm high on the guy already, I'm going Kyle Pitts. 20-point game, calling it. Kyle Pitts going against a pitiful Philadelphia Eagles team. Atlanta is trying to do something to rejuvenate their culture. Kyle Pitts, that's my guy for this weekend. If he goes off, mark me 1-0. If he doesn't, then I will pick somebody better next weekend. But Kyle Pitts, and I'm also picking him mainly because he's on my team and I need him to do good. So Kyle Pitts, that's my pick.
All right, let's see. For my pick, who I think will go off. There's some defenses but obviously I'm not going to pick a defense. I think Matthew Stafford could have a really good first week. They're going against the Bears, but I think that Los Angeles Rams offense was going to be formidable enough to go up against everybody. So I think Matthew Stafford has a big week, and I think Cooper Kupp has a great week. I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns this year. I think it's going to start this week 1 against a Bears team that should not be very good. And that's it. 5 minutes on the dot. Ended it right there. We'll be back with that next week. If you have questions, you can ask beforehand or you can ask while we are going through it. But now we're going to start getting into some games. A lot of games to go over, a lot of games being played this week with every team playing. But what is the biggest, most important game, maybe the game you're most looking forward to this week, and what do you expect will go down in that game?
Well, it's a pretty easy pick, but I got to go Browns-Chiefs. It's probably the most interesting game, so to speak. I mean, it's probably going to set the tone for the AFC powerhouses week 1. If I could pick a game in the NFC, so to speak, I mean, honestly, just the very first game of the season, Cowboys and Bucks, you get to see the defending champs absolutely ruin the Cowboys defense. I was going to say we could probably go through these games and just go, win here, win there. Yeah. Right out the gate, Buccaneers are going to start it off strong, probably going to beat them by double digits. That's my prediction, at least. It's at home in Tampa. Dak's coming back. He's going to come out guns blazing, but Buccaneers take this one easily. Yeah,
they're favored by 7.5, which is tied for the biggest spread of the week with a game we'll get to later that has a much different composition than this one, because the Cowboys are a team that some people think might be solid. They're the favorites to win their division. I know we're not very convinced about them, but yeah, I mean, Buccaneers, I see them handling this game pretty easily. I mean, there should be no Super Bowl hangover for a team that is bringing back all of its starters, and I think all 29 guys that played 500 snaps or something like that. Really the biggest thing I'm looking for is how Brady uses all of these weapons. He went through last year kind of not really having them all at once, trying to figure the offense out, figure everything out. But Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then Antonio Brown for a whole year. I'm really interested to see how he's going to get used. He's a late round fantasy guy that could really blow up if he is he could get more targets than Chris Godwin or so I'm interested to see how that works. And then the Cowboys, the Buccaneers defense is great. I'm really excited to see CeeDee Lamb play. I think he's going to have an insane year this year. And so, see how that starts. And if Dak is looking as good as he was when he was healthy last year, then the Dallas offense can be good while the defense struggles.
Looking at these games as well, another game that's interesting to me that I'm surprised I didn't stumble on it when I was first looking at the schedule a couple weeks ago, but Panthers-Jets. Sam Darnold getting some revenge against New York.
Yeah, right away.
That's also going to be really interesting, too. It's on at 10 a.m. I got other games to watch at 10 a.m., not going to lie. But, Jets and Panthers, I think the Panthers will definitely take that game. CMC is back. Sam Darnold's wanting to get revenge. Zach Wilson's going to do whatever he can on that game. But Carolina at home, new quarterback, borderline best running back in the league back. That's going to be a really entertaining game. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I had to at least get like one upset prediction on there. And you were talking a little bit about it before, but Bengals Vikings, I say the Bengals take it. That's going to be my upset of the weekend here, because sure, the Vikings definitely have the roster, the favored roster, if you will. Everybody's for the most part coming back. Justin Jefferson's going to have a great year, everything in between. But Bengals, it's going to be Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. I think they might put on a show. I think that offensive line is still atrocious, but Bengals and Vikings, I'm going to take the Bengals as my my upset pick of the weekend. What's kind of your upset of the weekend?
Yeah, let me check. I like a lot of the favorites this week, but if I'm going upset, I mean, I guess how much do they have to be? How much do they have to be not favored by to be an upset? Because maybe I got one that's
I mean,
skating by on a
according to the odds I'm
technicality.
seeing on here, it says the Chargers are only a 1 point favorite against
Well,
Washington. So maybe that's probably what you were looking at because you're a Washington football team
I
stan.
am, I am. But
Um,
if I'm going away from that, then I'd probably go down and looking at New Orleans getting 4 points against Green Bay. Green Bay was a better team last year. They should be the better team this year. But I mean, New Orleans, I think a lot of people are writing them off more than they should. I don't think they're going to be incredible this year, but I think they're going to be a solid team and a formidable team. And, for all the talk about, what was happening in the Saints in the offseason, losing Drew Brees and trying to figure out all this stuff, the Packers had one of the worst off seasons in the league, and luckily we're maybe able to salvage it with Aaron Rodgers. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I mean, I like the Saints to at least make it competitive, certainly cover that +4, and I wouldn't be surprised if they can take the game. I mean, Sean Payton is an incredible coach, and he's going to have his team ready to play week 1.
I mean, I could definitely see the Saints pulling an upset week 1, and then the stories are going to be, Aaron Rodgers lost week 1. Is he going to be out of Green Bay? I can definitely picture that scenario taking place. Do the Saints have enough power to actually do it, though, is kind of the other thing.
Alvin Kamara.
They got Alvin Kamara, don't get me wrong, but this isn't Drew Brees anymore. We got Jameis Winston now. So, I mean, he might throw more interceptions than Drew Brees, but he'll get the ball down the field, farther than Drew Brees. But, yeah, I can see it happening. It'd be funny if it happened, to be honest with you. So Aaron Rodgers could be in the media a little bit more about how he might be leaving Green Bay. I think probably the most bottom feeder team or game of this weekend by far has to be Jaguars Texans. I hope Trevor Lawrence starts it off 1-0. I saw a stat the other day that there's actually a streak with the number 1 overall pick where they've gotten their first career tie before their first career win for the past, I think, 4 years now. Baker Mayfield, Myles Garrett, Kyler Murray, and Joe Burrow all got their first career tie before they got a win. So if Trevor Lawrence can keep that streak going, that'd be hilarious considering it's against the Texans. But
yeah, Texans getting 2.5. I actually rolling with Texans, just taking the points.
You're rolling for the Texans?
Oh. I mean, I'm just not sold on the Jaguars. I mean,
I don't think anybody is. I just hope they can go 1-0 this weekend and then lose the rest of the games like they did last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Fun. I mean, a lot of people are viewing the Jaguars as kind of a step up from some of these other bottom feeder teams like the Texans and the Lions and even the Jets, but they were an atrocious team last year. Urban Meyer might not end up being a good NFL coach. I mean, there's a lot of kind of questions surrounding them. I think their offensive line is another one that's horrible. So this is not really a belief in the Texans. When it's 2 really bad teams or 2 really good teams, I like to take the points because I could see it going either way, and that's kind of the same thing going on here. So I could see Houston, making it close or even taking it just based on the Jaguars' ineptitude. But I want to go back to 2 of the games you mentioned before. And then we'll go through some of the rest of them. But Jets, Panthers, I like the Panthers. They're getting 5 points. I think they probably win that by a touchdown. But I could see the Jets being sneaky competitive against a Panthers team that might be a little overrated. The injuries they have on defense really sucks because the Jets were going to have Carl Lawson, they're going to have Vinny Curry, but now they're out those guys and. Robert Saleh, who's a defensive coach, is now without one of his best defensive weapons. But, this is a team that, could be competitive. Zach Wilson could lead a late round drive to get a backdoor cover on that. But I'm still rolling with the Panthers. And then, Bengals, Vikings. I mean, I think the Bengals are right there with some of the worst teams this year. Jamar Chase hasn't been able to really catch a ball in the preseason. He's had a lot of issues with drops to where the point to where it's to the point where people are getting a little concerned. I think he flips the switch eventually, but I think that happens a little bit later, as it tends to do with rookie wide receivers. But I think Minnesota could be sneaky good this year. Their defense should be much closer to when they were one of the better ones in the league than last year when they were one of the worst teams in the league. And this is a dynamic offense with Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and then Kirk Cousins is a, perfect game manager for them. And this is a Bengals defense that is not very good. So I am pretty confident in the Vikings taking that one.
Oh, don't get me wrong. The Vikings roster is quite it's a completely different story than the Bengals. Don't get me wrong. I can just see just a miraculous connection between Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow this weekend. That's just me though. I understand Jamar Chase has been struggling a lot this preseason. If I'm picking, I hate to mention this just considering my fandom already, but the Seahawks are a 2.5 point favorite over the Colts on the road. And if there's anything I know about, Seahawks away games is that they're really just a toss up with a lot of things. I recall an away game against Buffalo last year where the Seahawks looked like a college football team out there playing an NFL team.
Wasn't great.
I would not be surprised.
The Colts are not the Bills, though.
They're not the Bills. Don't get me wrong. They don't have Carson Wentz starting under center, and they're going through a wide receiver, train wreck, if you will. But the defense and the O-line is still something to be at least or no, it's Zach Martin that's not playing on Thursday. I mistook him for Quentin Nelson. But
Quentin Nelson got, I think, the same surgery Carson Wentz did over the offseason. But I believe he's also back. But there was, questions about his health, but I think he should be good. So there was offensive line concerns. And I think Ryan Kelly went into the COVID protocol. I believe he's out now. But yeah, they've kind of had a lot of stuff going on.
So don't get me wrong, the Colts got some boo-boos on the way, if you will. But Seahawks, I know the defense is still not completely taken care of. They got Jamal for a huge contract. Bobby Wagner's still there, and Carlos Dunlap came back. But they just lost KJ Wright this past week to the Raiders. So a lot of one step forward, two steps back for the Seahawks defense, if you ask me. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a real close game in Indianapolis that could either be a Seahawks win or an Indianapolis win. I would expect a really close game. I don't expect a blowout from either side, but that could be a real kind of 50-50 game, just knowing, Seahawks on the road starting out the season after kind of a strange, not necessarily strange end to their last year, but just an underwhelming end to their year last year. That could be a really, really close game where it's both teams are under 20, but they're a point off of each other. That could be a real hard-fought game, I'm thinking.
Yeah, Seahawks, usually if they're getting more than 3 points, I really like the opposing team because they like to play in these one-score, really close games, win by a field goal, win by 2 points, but they're getting 2.5. And, I think the defense isn't great, but the second half of the year, the defense was actually much better, very improved. I think they're really solid against the run, which is what the Colts are projected to lean on with Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor has a lackluster day, and I think they are I think Carson Wentz is going to have to beat them, and I don't expect him to do that. I think Russell Wilson and, Chris Carson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett score on the Colts defense, and I think they'll win it by anywhere from 3-7. I don't expect it to be a blowout, but I think they can they can handle the Colts. But I want to go to another game that is a pretty big game that I'm surprised you haven't brought up yet, and that's Steelers versus Bills.
It's because the Bills are going to take it easily.
Yeah, Bills 6.5. I think they will, but Pittsburgh is one of those teams that is hard to write off every year, even when they feel like they're going on a bit of a downturn. I mean, this is still a team that went 11-0 to start out the year. Obviously, some pieces have changed, but I like Buffalo there, but the Pittsburgh defense certainly could give them an issue. It's not entirely out of the question.
Najee Harris will have a good first game if people are going to be real high on him for an offensive rookie of the year campaign, because that's what I've seen these past couple of weeks is people are saying, oh, Najee Harris. Did anyone remember that the Steelers drafted Najee Harris? I'm like, yeah, I know that the Steelers drafted Najee Harris. They also still have Ben Roethlisberger and a weird kind of disjointed wide receiver group, even though the talent's there. That being said, Steel Curtain is still in full effect after all these years, but Bills at home, start out the season. They're coming back with a vengeance this year. Josh Allen's my MVP pick of this season. Najee Harris will have a good game, probably an 80 to 100-yard rushing game, but Bills take it double digits, 30-plus points. I'm calling it.
Yeah, I mean,
Come on now.
but Bills are certainly one of, if not the most complete team in the NFL, whereas the Steelers still have some holes. It might be a while before we see the Bills take a loss, and yeah, I mean, 6.5 points is a bit daunting against a team as good as the Steelers could be, but I think the Bills are that good to where they should be able to handle that. I still have questions about the Bills' running game and their running back. I'm not really
Zach Moss is going to be seeing a lot more touches, I think. A lot of eyes are going to be on him.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sold on either of those two. I mean, the Bills, I think they passed actually a lot last year. I think they're going to pass a ton. So expect more of that from them. And then, yeah, the Bills defense isn't great, but it's certainly good. It's above average, and so we'll see how the Pittsburgh offense looks in a decent test. I mean, it's not anything crazy, but it certainly is not a walk in the park for Ben, and we'll see if he looks like he's old and washed, or if he looks like he's got one more ride off into the sun in him. We can go on.
I see it, the Bills fans are going to be there in the stands, and Ben Roethlisberger's coming into town to try to. I mean, let's face it, the guy's on probably his last year of his career, and going on the road to Buffalo with a team that is in a lot of off-season drama in terms of relocation. Fans they're not going to give him a walk in the park by any means. They're going to give him a tough time. Ben Roethlisberger, he's probably going to throw like 2-3 picks. I'm telling you, like, this is going to be a laughing stock for the Steelers this weekend, and the Bills will put up 30-plus points. That's how confident I am in this Bills team to win this.
So how many points do you think they'll win by?
Well, I said 30-plus. Doesn't mean I'm saying, they'll probably get like 31, 34, and the Steelers will struggle to put up 20.
So you think, like, what? They'll win by
I'll go 31-17.
So you think they'll win by 14? I think Pittsburgh will be within 2 touchdowns. I think that.
Within 2 touchdowns, I would hope.
Yeah.
That, if they want to at least be in the game.
Yeah, but I don't think the Bills are gonna blow them out. I think they'll cover. I think they'll win by a score, maybe 10 points, but I don't think it's gonna be, a 2-touchdown game like you're saying. So I'm going against you there.
It's gonna be a circus act. I'll tell you that much. Just wait.
But yeah. All right, but that's certainly one of the most watchable games. One of the games I'm looking forward to checking and seeing. And then another game that you mentioned earlier is Arizona and Tennessee. Tennessee favored by 3. I like Arizona being able to cover. I think they're obviously in a very tough division, but I think they're a much improved team. I think they can, certainly win this game. They'll have to stop Derrick Henry, obviously. But I like them this week. I think Tennessee is a team that might be on a bit of a regression from last year.
I like Arizona in terms of their defensive personnel as opposed to Tennessee. I only really know Byard at safety for Tennessee. And
they got Harold Landry, they got Bud Dupree, Jeffrey Simmons on the interior. So they've got some pieces there, but corner's a bit weak for them.
Right, and I'm looking at this Cardinals team where they got a lot of great young guys out there, especially what's his face from Clemson that was on that team. I'm trying to remember his name. It was like one of the first. Defense? Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Isaiah Simmons.
Isaiah Simmons on that team.
He was underwhelming last year, so hopefully he gets it together this year.
I think he'll get it together, and you got J.J. Watt coming into town with Chandler Jones. That's going to be a great D-line for them, and you can't forget about Budda Baker, and I think Pat Pete is coming back as well.
No, he's on Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay, so it's just
they're going
Budda Baker back there. But Byron I like Murphy.
Their corners.
Who else is?
Their corners. They got like Byron Murphy. Really, that's kind of their best one. They're not.
They have another linebacker on that team that I'm forgetting about. I know. It's not Isaiah Simmons. It's somebody else. But
they did have Jordan Hicks, but
I like their defensive personnel more than Tennessee per se. And Tennessee, I'm not going to say they're overrated coming out of this offseason. I mean, people saw Julio Jones and Derrick Henry on the same team. They absolutely lost their marbles about it. So Tennessee, I think it's going to be a fun game, but like I had said before about Kyler Murray being one of the top, kind of MVP candidates going into this next year, it's going to be a lot of Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, they kind of had a decrease in running back star power, losing out on Kenyon Drake, and I think Edmonds is the starting running back.
Edmonds and James Conner are there.
So James Conner is in town now, and it's still going to be the Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins connection for the most part on offense, but I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Tannehill, especially since now he's got two great wide receiver targets, and you can't just get away with giving it to Derrick Henry, 6 out of 10 times. So yeah, it'll be entertaining in terms of the star power, but
I think you can get away with feeding it to Derrick Henry.
Well, sure, but you can't. You're not going to beat this Cardinals team by just running the ball 80% of the time.
We'll see. I mean, they're certainly built for Derrick Henry to do what he does, and if he takes a step back, then Tennessee will take a big step back.
There's going to be a mean tug of war with that Titans offensive playbook of are we going to give it to Brown or Julio, or are we going to run it to Derrick Henry? And everybody's going to want their touches, and Ryan Tannehill is going to be in the middle of that to try to figure out what to do with it. And I could see that game going either way.
He's gonna have a good year. I think he'd be a pretty good play this week. I think he's got so many weapons that it's gonna be. You're not planning on slowing down Tannehill. I mean, you can't really commit to one thing, so he could have a pretty good season, starting with a good week here. But we'll move on to a battle of the birds: Eagles versus Falcons. Falcons 3.5-point favorites. I really like the Falcons in this game. I think the Falcons could be a sneaky good team this year. But yeah, and Philadelphia, I think, is deservedly so at the bottom, mentioned with a lot of these other teams. So, I'm not expecting big things out of them this year. But, if this was last year's Falcons team, I'd take Eagles in the points because the Falcons seemed like they couldn't not play a close game that they ended up losing. But Arthur Smith is now the head coach. I think he's going to really, improve this team, and I like what the Falcons are doing, and I think they started off 1-0.
So let me ask you this: if Jalen Hurts starts this game off pitifully, 2-3 picks before halftime, something horrendous, they putting Flacco out there, they putting Minshew out there. What do you think? They're
not putting either of them out there.
You don't think they'll take him off at any point, even if he's playing terrible?
No, I mean. Flacco's done. He's washed. He's never going in. And Gardner Minshew, while he's very likable, I mean, he's not a guy who elevates. He's super solid. I think he's a perfect backup. But there's a reason Jalen Hurts is a starter. He's got more potential. And
do you think they're all in on Jalen though? Like even if he plays terrible,
no, but it's still going to
throw him out there.
It's still going to take a few games. Because if he plays terrible, I don't even know if it's going to be his fault. Is the line not able to block? I think he's got one of the worst receiving cores in the league. So, I think there's much more problems on that team than Jalen Hurts if Jalen Hurts is struggling. So I think it's better to just ride with him. I think we're going to see a lot of running out of him, which is something that will certainly help them. But yeah, Falcons, I think.
Falcons are going to take care of business this weekend.
Their offense is going to look really good this year. Russell Gage, breakout game that I've been calling for months. He's going to have a big year this year. He doesn't have the hype that Calvin Ridley had last year, but he's in that same role, and I think he's going to surprise some people.
You'll be high on Russell Gage. I'll be high on Kyle Pitts. We'll see who gets. We'll see who gets the more fantasy points.
Yeah, for sure. Going on to a game that we briefly mentioned, Chargers at the Washington football team. My Washington football team. Those are my guys. I like the Chargers as well, but not enough to go against the Washington football team. I think that defense comes out strong. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick plays solid enough to earn them a win. Obviously, the Chargers have a new head coach in Brandon Staley, and they shouldn't be doing some of the things they were doing last year and just terrible mismanagement at the end of the games. But I still think that this Washington football team is a big sleeper.
I feel like this is gonna be a scrappy game.
Yeah.
A very, hard fought, running, incomplete pass kind of game. It's gonna be a lot of 3 and outs, maybe some turnovers here and there. I can see Herbert playing I can see Herbert not turning the ball over, so to speak, but I can see him getting sacked a lot. And I know that they improved their O-line.
Yeah, the O-line should be good, but this is a big test.
But this is a huge test week 1. Chase Young, to say the least, is going to just Chase Young and Montez Sweat alone are going to create problems for this offensive line. Austin Eckler comes back, though. Maybe he has a big game. Keenan Allen's always solid. I think they got Jared Cook in the offseason, or maybe he was there last year. I can't quite remember. But
no, he's new this year.
So but Washington football team, what's his face? Terry McLaurin, who's at least on my fantasy team. Maybe he can put up a nice 40 points for me to make up for it. Terry McLaurin goes out there. Antonio Gibson, sorry.
Yeah.
They got pieces on both ends of offense, but this is going to be a real scrappy game. I think Chase Young will have at least 2 sacks. There's going to be some turnovers on both ends. This probably will be like a 13-10 game, and I could see Washington taking it too. I think Chargers will have a very poor first week, and Washington's just going to wear you out the entire game. 13-10 Washington is probably what I'm going.
I mean, this can be a big thing. I mean, if Justin Herbert is a superstar this year, then it'll start this week if he kind of dices up the Washington football team defense. Austin Eckler, I think, will have a great year. Really high on him this year. I think it might get off to a slow start against that great defense. But yeah, and I'm going with Washington, obviously. Next game, we can probably spend very little time on it because it is the other game with the highest spread, 7.5 points. The Niners are favored to beat the Lions. I think that's a 49ers cover pretty easily. I think the Lions will be pitiful this year, and
maybe we'll see a miracle in Motor City. I'm ready for it.
No, this is going to be the Niners. It's going to be them staying. Last year we had a lot of injuries. We're ready this year. It's going to be interesting to see. We talked about Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo if they do some platoon stuff as they did in that last preseason game, using both of those guys. Getting Trey Lance out there.
I mean, if they're up by like 24 at the start of the fourth, if they're up by like 21 at the start of the fourth, put Trey Lance out there. Why not?
Yeah, but we'll see if they throw him in some packages, let him use his legs. That'll be the most interesting part of the game because I
have to speak on Detroit's part though. If they do end up having a huge upset victory, what's the new coach's name? Dan Campbell, right?
Dan Campbell.
No one's gonna be making fun of Dan Campbell at that point. If they squeeze out an upset over the Niners, he's already a character and a half in the press conferences. I would. Love to see. I'm
incredibly confident in the Niners this week.
Oh, I am too. I'm just saying an upset would be awesome for the Lions' new head coach.
Yeah, another game that should be really close. Division game, Miami, New England. Pretty similar place teams, I believe. Miami, obviously very close to making the playoffs last year. Now they got Tua under center with a great defense. New England had a bit of a down year last year after losing Brady, but now Mac Jones is there. The defense should be a lot better with some COVID opt-outs coming back. This should be a scrappy game as well. I wouldn't be surprised if New England wins, but I'm going to take the points with Miami. They were 2.5 and now it's at 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami takes this, although I do think that New England will be much improved this year.
New England, I think, is going to play the safest game of football they've played in years. They're going to run the ball extremely heavy. They're going to pass the ball within 10 yards almost every time. I think Belichick's mentality is get a win on the board, get Mac Jones's confidence up week 1 in his debut. You look on the other side of the ball you look on the other end of the field with Miami. Tua, by all means, is not a volume quarterback. He's going to throw well less than 200 yards passing, considering it's a New England defense. So this is going to be, I think, a pretty run-heavy game, and considering New England has a ton of different people in the backfield to get touches, I suspect a Mac Jones boring debut. He'll probably get 150 yards passing, maybe a touchdown, maybe a pick, maybe both. But it's going to be very run-heavy. Belichick's going to do whatever he can to get a win on the record and take care of business for a division match and try to get a wild card spot.
See, I don't think Miami's going to be like this run heavy team. I don't think their run,
but they're not going to be a pass heavy team. So what are they going to be? You know what I mean?
I think they're going to pass it more than they're going to run. I think we'll see some RPOs and stuff. But the receivers are a very talented part of that team. They drafted Jalen Waddle high, not because they're going to run the ball all the time. They're going to take shots with him. They've got Devontae Parker. Will Fuller is going to be out for this game, but he'll be back. He's still serving the back end of that suspension. But I think they're going to get the ball to their guys in space. I mean, I don't think that they're planning on just pounding the rock with Myles Gaskin. I don't think that, they're really built for that. So I think, they're going to get the ball out of Tua's hands quick, but they're going to throw a lot more. I think Tua's going to have a pretty good game. And I think,
you got to think about where this game is too. This is in Foxborough. Yeah. The fans are back in the stadium for the first time in a year. They're not letting Tua have a good game.
I think Tua goes for over 200, probably gets 2 touchdowns, leads Miami to a close victory.
I'll take a bet on that. He's not going over 200.
No okay. Way. I mean, we'll check back in next week.
I'll go on DraftKings or whatever and get that bet going. Well, no way that Tua throws over 200 yards.
Oh, okay. No way. Well, we can agree to disagree because I think that this Miami offense is going to have a bit better passing than people expect. But another game that will certainly feature, I would say, 2 200-yard passers for sure is Cleveland, Kansas City. Kansas City favored by 6.5. I'm taking Cleveland in the points just because, I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland wins this game. And I think getting 6.5 points the Lions are getting 7.5 points, and I don't think they have a shot to win the game. And Cleveland's getting 6.5 points, and I think, they certainly could put up a fight and come away with a victory. I like the value there. Kansas City is great, but the offensive line was an issue last year. The defense has never been able to carry this team. And I think, the Browns, like the Bills, are creating more of a balanced team with a complete roster. And I think, they could certainly give the Chiefs a scare.
My only thing with this game is it's on the road. So it's going to be a very, very hard game out the gate. But Browns almost beat the Chiefs on the road in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They were a play away. They were a surprise 4th-and-1 conversion play away from beating the Chiefs. But this isn't going to be Chad Henne under center. This will be Patrick Mahomes. This will be Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I would love to see an absolute shootout between these teams. Both have 30-plus points. Will that happen, so to speak? I don't think so.
I think it'll be more along the lines of a shootout than a defensive battle.
Well, I like the Browns' defense more than the Chiefs' defense, by all means. But the Chiefs don't care who your defense is unless you're Tampa Bay.
It doesn't matter.
Tampa Bay is the only defense since Patrick Mahomes' career started where he did not score a touchdown.
Yeah.
So Chiefs don't really care what defense they're going against.
We'll see.
Baker's got a lot to step up to. I think this is Baker's contract year, so this is right out the gate. You're getting tested. So it's going to be immensely entertaining. I'd love for the Browns to win. I'm picking Chiefs, though.
I'm still going Chiefs to win. I just think Browns cover. I think this will be pretty close. I think the Chiefs drop maybe 3 games this year. They're an elite team. But, the biggest thing going on here will be, is the Kansas City offensive line improved, enough to do that? The Chiefs, is the Browns defensive line good enough? Obviously, Myles Garrett is who he is, and they brought in Jadeveon Clowney, and they've hopefully got some other guys to rush the passer. But the Chiefs, I think, have 5 offensive linemen that were not playing last year. Obviously, Laurent Duvernay Tardif was there 2 years ago, but he opted out last year. So that's going to be the big matchup, and that's going to say a lot, going forward for both of these teams. So I think it'll be a close game. I still think that the Chiefs will win, but I think it'll be a Browns cover. Now we can move on to the Denver Broncos versus the New York Giants. Denver favored by 2.5 points. This is one of those games that, seems a little bit maybe up in the air. I'm going with Denver because I don't think New York's going to be good this year, and it's about as simple as that. I don't think Denver will be great, but I think they'll be better than the football Giants.
I feel like this is going to be a very, very close game, like down to like the final minute.
Yeah, certainly possible.
Who am I going to trust when, the clock's ticking with the game on the line? Daniel Jones or Teddy Bridgewater? As much as I kind of feel bad for Daniel Jones, not gonna lie, because I like the way that the guy plays, not necessarily throwing the ball, but athleticism wise, I think he's very underrated. However, with all those weapons and Saquon coming back, he's gonna have a lot on his plate. And Saquon is, he didn't have, to my knowledge, he didn't have a ton of injury issues before the NFL, but coming off of a torn ACL, MCL in his second year in the league, does not give me a good sign to start out the year, especially against a Broncos defense, which is always at least average this past decade.
Yeah, I think Saquon, it might take him a little bit to get fully up to speed. I think he starts slow, and I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be good enough against a plucky Denver secondary and defense to lead
the Broncos get all of their weapons back on offense. Cortland Sutton's come back. Noah Fant. Hopefully he can actually start putting stuff together.
Big year for Jerry Jeudy this year.
Jerry Jeudy,
second year in the league. Yeah, I think Denver wins this. Not necessarily handily, but I don't think it's going to be a game-winning drive or an attempted game-winning drive.
I think it's going to be a game-winning stop is what it's going to be. I think Denver's going to have a game-winning stop, midway up the field or whatnot, on a Hail Mary. They're going to stop it.
I think this will be decided a bit before that final drive. But going on to another matchup, the Bears at the Los Angeles Rams. It's now up to 7.5 favorites for the Rams. It's moved a bit, so they're tied for the biggest favorite. But I like the Rams. I think the Rams are going to be really good this year, and I think it's going to start there. Like I mentioned, I think Matthew Stafford, even against a fairly good Bears defense, I don't really think the Bears secondary is all that great. And if the Rams line can hold up and keep Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn out of the backfield, then I think Stafford will have a big day.
Stafford will have a good game. Like you said, with Cooper Kupp going off, it's pretty safe bet. They're not going to be running the ball that much without Cam Akers there now.
Hey, Darrell Henderson.
Darrell Henderson's still there. I get it.
Good.
He'll be good. They're not going to be giving him a ton of work, really. They're still
that offense relies on the run. They need to run, so that they will.
They spent 3 first-round picks on Matt Stafford and traded away their former first overall pick.
They're still going to
be very Matt Stafford centric.
They're going to throw it a bunch, but they're still going to set up some runs. We'll see how that goes against that defense. But yeah, this is going to be
the defense is going to just absolutely ruin Chicago.
I'm gonna go. I say Matt Stafford will have the most fantasy points of any quarterback this week.
That's pretty bold.
That's
fantasy points. Against a Bears defense, I guess they are at home. They got to deal with Khalil, really.
I think the Bears defense is more of, at this point, by name than by anything else. I mean, they've lost a lot of pieces. They've got Khalil Mack. They've got Eddie Jackson. But other than that, I mean, Roquan Smith is good at inside linebacker. But I mean, this isn't, this defense that, almost destroyed Aaron Rodgers in week 1 a few years ago. I think they've taken a step back. So, and I think that the Rams, are creating an offensive juggernaut.
You said Stafford's going to have the most points at quarterback this weekend. You know what? As much as I would love, so I don't agree whatsoever. As much as I'd like to pick Josh Allen, I'll just carry it into the next game that we'll talk about, Ravens and Raiders.
The final game, Monday night.
I think Lamar will have the most points on fantasy, considering the Raiders defense. I mean, they got a little bit better where they got Ngakoue, right? And drafted Travis Mayrick.
Trayvon
Mayrick. I always want to call him Travis.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, expect maybe 30-plus points on fantasy. Him and Josh Allen, for me, are going to be right there with each other. But Lamar Jackson, 100 yards rushing, 200 yards passing. I think he'll make this look easy. It's the first game in Allegiant Stadium. Raiders fans are going to go
first
nuts
game with fans.
First game with fans. Or sorry, it's the first game with fans in Allegiant Stadium, and they're going to be.
Well, I guess
they're going to be disappointed.
Technically, the Seahawks versus Raiders preseason game had fans, but that was the first time fans were in the stadium. But yeah, for Monday night, fans for a regular season game in the Roomba. But yeah, Baltimore Ravens 4.5. I think they'll do that. I am very high on the Ravens this year. I think they're gonna put it all together and be a very formidable team.
It's either going to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson for me, and I will pick Lamar Jackson to be the most productive quarterback this weekend. If I could pick like a random one to do a little bit better, so that's the thing. Like all the good quarterbacks are going against great defenses.
You can't be throwing out 5 picks here. I'm rolling.
I was going to pick one more. Don't worry about it. I was going to say
you can't pick 3.
Aaron Rodgers is I'll go for a dark horse for it. But Lamar Jackson's
how is that a dark horse? He was the MVP
for the most points this weekend. That's all I'm saying.
He was the MVP last year. He threw 48 touchdowns. That's not a dark horse.
I don't think Matt Stafford's first game as a Ram going against a Bears defense that may be based off of namesake or not.
He's going to have the most points.
I mean, a 7.5-point favorite against the Bears. I don't care if they're at home or if they're in Germany for all I care. A 7.5-point favorite is insane against
Andy Dalton.
Yes, against one person, but
Andy Dalton's a starting quarterback. They're not good. The Bears are not going to be
a 5-point favorite. 7.5 seems disrespectful to the Bears.
Rams are going to cover. Matthew Stafford's going to go off. Darrell Henderson's going to score a touchdown in there as well. I feel good about this team.
So not only is Matt Stafford going to have the best game this weekend, you're saying the offense is going to be the best, like entirely. Like they're going to put up like 30-plus points.
I mean, why not? I think Sean McVay is going to be on a season-long just like, look how good I am. Look at what I can do with a guy who isn't Jared Goff. And I think, it's going to work.
Let's see. Rams still win, but I'm just saying.
They win by like 9. I'd say they win by like 9. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we didn't even mention the Rams defense, which is Andy Dalton going to score on the Rams defense? Probably not. I mean, he probably will score, but he's not going to do much against the Rams defense and an offensive line
at halftime. Then we'll see.
I'm not putting Justin Fields out there to get his ass kicked by Aaron Donald.
It's gonna be one great of a debut though if he makes a game out of it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe that game's a little bit more entertaining than I made it out to be. Sunday night football too. I mean, we'll see
it'll be entertaining. It'll be entertaining to see the Rams whoop on the Bears. But that's going to do it for us this week. We will be back with you next week to recap the action from Week 1, the first NFL week of the year. And make sure to check out the other Dash Sports titles. We've got some college football starting up that we're talking about all across the Pac-12. And we've got some other sports and shows that we're covering. And so to stay in the loop on that, remember to follow Dash Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as subscribe to the Dash Sports YouTube channel and check out the website, dashsports.tv. We will be back with you next week. And until then, we will